Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Black. Released back in 2006, this game was, for a lot of people, including me, a game that changed everything. Depending who you ask, some will even call this the best first-person shooter ever made on the PS2. But it's been about 20 years now, and we're gonna jump straight in and see with our own two eyeballs exactly what the hype was all about. It was 2009 for me at the very first gaming expo I'd ever been to, and I walked past this dusty little store with a shelf full of PS2 games, and right there in the center is a game called Black at a marked down price, so it wasn't really asking for much at the time, but I wasn't necessarily a first-person shooter kind of gamer. I was more so on the third-person action-adventure kind of thing. But something in me was like, nah, this game is gonna be the one, and I need to get this. And for the price it was, I couldn't really argue. And I suppose that iconic cover design at the time was really hard to say no to as well. And I think every gamer has that kind of story of that first game they found by accident that kind of changed everything for them. I didn't really have much experience with first-person shooter games, but this felt a little different to me. It had a bit of charm to it, it had a bit of weight to it, and there was something that gave it a bit of gravity that I couldn't really explain. And I think at the time the guns felt real to me. The guns really felt like they had an impact and it mattered what you did. The environment was really interesting, the way you could interact with them. And there was something about it that I just didn't get to experience with other games that I had at the time. And it was our first attempt of cinematic kind of gameplay where you have this story-driven game with a lot of action elements, and you could see that it borrowed things from action films, it borrowed from other games, and I think that's what made these kind of games feel more like an experience, more like an event, rather than just some game that you played. And it felt more like being inside of a movie rather than just smashing some buttons and doing some things on a screen. It was genuinely new at the time. Looking back at it now, the aiming and the mechanics of this game is incredibly painful. This thing feels so stiff and you get frustrated so quickly. And it's one thing where I guess we just have to be honest about what it was rather than trying to protect the memory, but two things can be true at the same time. The honesty makes this game amazing in how we look back at it and how we remember what it did for us. You can love something and admit that it hasn't aged well, and you can also love something that other people don't necessarily love. Just because it's a bad game doesn't mean that it isn't someone's favorite game. And I think that's more closer to the truth rather than a betrayal of the things that we love. It was more that my hands remembered something that my brain had forgotten, and that this game was really difficult to play, for me at least, because this wasn't my cup of tea. And what's beautiful is that we don't remember games exactly as they were. We often think back to games being a lot better than they actually were, but what we actually remember is how it made us feel. And our brain tends to store those feelings and not necessarily the frame rate or the mechanics or the gameplay. And what's interesting is when we go back, the games themselves haven't changed, but we have. And the gap between who you were then and who you are now is the same distance as the magic you remember when you played them and the frustration that you feel when you play it today. It's important that we sit in that feeling and just appreciate it for what it was. And it also means that back in the day, your favorite game wasn't necessarily the best game, but it was just the best game that you had. Back then, you didn't have this long list, this long catalog of games to compare everything one another. You had what you had, and you loved it with every ounce of your soul. So your favorite game wasn't necessarily the best game that was there, it was just the one that you had. It was your game. And that's beautiful. In the same way that your favorite athlete isn't probably the best athlete in the world, but he's your favorite. And it's a more purer kind of love that you can have for something. And it's something that modern gaming, even with all these endless options, will struggle to replicate no matter how many times we try. And I always think back to that day at that expo. What would have happened if I picked something else? Who would I have become? What would have happened to me as a gamer, the kind of games that I would have played, the lifetime of experiences? Where would you be if the first game you played was something completely different? And Black was one of those games that paved the way for something bigger than itself. And we have to remember that legacy can also be what something has started rather than what it was. Black was one of those games that was a forerunner. It was this cinematic FPS experience that we were trying to build towards, where it's story driven, visually intense, emotionally charged, and it ultimately becomes the template for things like Call of Duty and Medal of Honor and what those games would ultimately become. And I think Black doesn't get nearly enough credit, partly because it arrived before the conversation began, but the conversation may have not even started without it. But the DNA of all of these things still exists within something like Black all the way back in 2006. And this is one of those special memories for me, despite how difficult the game was and the fact that I never finished it, but it's still a core memory and it's something that shaped me. I remember inviting a friend over to stay at my house for the weekend, and we just played Black through the night for like 2 days, and together we got further than I ever could alone at this kind of game. And for me, that's what gaming actually is. It's not really about the graphics and the mechanics. I think we've become spoiled to that now, and we've changed, the goalposts, but it's rather the shared experiences that we had, like playing zombies on 4-way split screen with your mates at a party or something like that. It's the memories that are attached to these games. And there's this butterfly effect with a game like this for me and so many other people, where I have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours in Call of Duty that all trace back to me buying and playing this game for the very first time in 2009. Modern Warfare, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, the original ones, Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, Ghosts. I'm talking thousands and thousands of hours. None of that happens without this simple PS2 shooter game that I found at an expo in 2009. And that's what's crazy to me. It's how this one accidental purchase, because I saw something that I thought I would try, would lead to an entire lifetime of experiences for me. It reshaped the next decade of my gaming life. And even beyond that, it had an impact on my social life, the friends that I made, staying up overnight every single weekend with random people on Xbox party chats playing Call of Duty through the night, all those late nights. Black doesn't just give me an FPS addiction, it gives me a whole world of experiences that I'm going to carry with me until the day that I die. So is this game worth playing today? If I'm going to be honest with you, the answer is no. Because the frustration of having to deal with the differences based on how we've been conditioned now, that frustration outweighs the nostalgia that you remember. But it is absolutely worth sitting down and remembering this game for what it was and what it did for us. It's worth appreciating. It's worth us recognizing what it created for an entire era of gaming that came afterwards and for the people that played it. Some things in this life do not need to be re-experienced, but rather celebrated, and Black is one of those things. My name is Tofu, and if you enjoyed this little piece, then please be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of our videos, and like the video because it really helps us out a lot. And if you would be so kind as to click the link in my description and sign up to the lobby, which is my mailing list, and it's essentially a way for me to get things out to you much quicker than I can through YouTube, and I can send you a lot of cool stuff, and in the future possibly do some cool things together. But I really appreciate you sticking around, and if you could just do me a couple favors here and there, I would appreciate that greatly. And leave a comment down below telling me how you felt about this video. If you played Black, how was it for you? What do you remember about it? I want to hear absolutely everything. I'll catch you in the next one.